All right, perfect.
All right.
Um, Thank you, everyone who's been able to join, and for any of you who watch this recording later. We're joined today by the illustrious Elizabeth Stevens. She'll do a much better job of introducing herself and her background than I will, but we're very grateful to have her speaking today. I will let her take over and do most of the talking, and just appreciate everybody joining. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for that. And for everybody, I want to say, I apologize, but most of you are here and would consider yourself cyber people. So I think you understand a little bit of the paranoia of screen share. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide. Today, we're going to talk about the cyber kill chain. Hopefully, but this will be something that you guys can take away from this. And hopefully there'll be something that you take away from this that you feel like you wouldn't have gotten just by reading a book or watching a video. And the session itself is completely conversational in two-way. So feel free to stop me if you want to stop to talk, or if you want me to go back over something, or you have a pertinent comment. I will stop if it's appropriate and it's okay. And if I don't stop, it's because it's not appropriate or your question was too hard for me to answer. So, all right, so let's get real. Right now, you're staring at a profile of a cybersecurity nerd who's like made a career out of like safeguarding digital assets, right? But I'm kind of the nerd that would always be able to like pick a game up, whether it was like Pokemon Unite or Mario Brothers, and come up with a pretty good game plan. So I say that because a little bit about me is that I love the challenge. I spent 2 decades in defense and IT, and that like translates to like a serious level of and a plethora of actual cyber risk strategy and cyber defense operations, both offensive and defensive. And all of that to say that like it's the hardcore doctrine stuff that keeps the bad guys and bad gals at bay. And that's what I'm about. I'm about protecting lives. And I think you guys should be about protecting lives because that's what this is about, but also keeping the business running. That's my jam. That's the happy sweet spot. And we don't compromise on that. I'm going to say swipe right if you need encryption that makes Fort Knox looks like a kid's playhouse. That's me. If your uptime's rock solid, swipe a little right there too. And then, a little aside, like if you guys know about diversity and how inclusivity makes teams better and ensures that we can defeat the cyber threat, I'm on for that. My interests, as you can see, they break down to be a couple of different things. Security assessments are my jam, but also building things and automating things in a way that allows for my red teamer and my cyber warrior to poke fun at and torment my blue team brethren. And I'm looking for those cyber professionals who share my obsession and fun, love, and attitude for rock solid encryption, reliable systems, and getting things done right the first time because it's our responsibility. Those are my favorite quotes. I'm going to say, in God we trust, but all others verify, because that's the name of this game. And a quick fun fact, I am a consummate gamer. I game in life. I'm a Lean Six Sigma type. People say it's because I'm operational, but really it's because I like to gamify. And what that translates to for us now in this day and age is, as a cyber professional, the number one thing you're going to know about me, the thing that makes me exceptional, and I suspect the thing that makes you all exceptional as well, is that we're trying to hack the systems. And that's what's going to make us better than the bad guys. Next slide, please. So we're actually here to talk about cybersecurity, but also proactive management of cybersecurity and the way that we know it. Right now, we've got AI, we've got generative AI, we've got a new paradigm, and that new paradigm is about intelligence and what we can do with human intelligence and those methodologies and how we use those things to protect our nature. You've gone ahead to the next slide. Today, we're going to talk about, in February of 2024, next slide, the healthcare industry was shaken by a significant cyber attack. A lot of you know about that because that is where we are. This particular cyber attack hit Change Healthcare. Change is a leader. The incident impacted millions of patients, and it is very relevant and a vivid reminder of how vulnerable healthcare is and how important it is that we understand the infrastructure and the threats to that. But I would say as well, what if, because it's today, we had proactive intelligence and cyber risk management skills? What if we were monitoring our systems and we could anticipate this or even prevent such an attack? So today we're going to talk about getting into this attack through a lens of the cyber kill chain. We're going to dissect the tactics used and explore some defensive strategies, high level and kind of low level as well. And then we're going to talk about how the defensive strategies that we're going to take going forward will strengthened by intelligence and operational processes, will help us to do proactive offense as well as defense. Next slide. So we talk about the system and exactly what a kill chain is. We start out with the target. Next slide. So the target is change health. Healthcare technology is fascinating. And, we're going to delve in and explore how healthcare is actually reshaping the entire industry. Change is a force for innovation, and their story does actually offer some valuable insights. I myself expected to either have a story about an airplane or someone that could, like some high-speed, low-drag supercar story. But right now, this is really where we are. Change is a leader and an innovator. Next slide. And the technology and their use of the technology is also quite interesting. The challenge. Healthcare is an industry that is significantly overweighted, heavy from the top down, but it's also plagued by old and fragmented systems, spiraling health costs, as well as like administrative processes, and now even policies and requirements that are outside of most industries' nightmare. The inefficiencies in healthcare, period, as an industry, both hinder patient care from a customer service perspective, but also strain the providers themselves from an administrative as well as physical, social, and psychological. And this creates an experience just from a customer and a positive outcome perspective that is frustrating to everyone involved. Next slide. This is where Change stepped in. They're a leading, and some might say the leading healthcare technology company that has a mission of making all of that complexity into simplicity. They do that through, yes, guess what? Trons. They offer a vast suite of solutions spanning financial management, clinical decision support, revenue cycle management, and a whole bunch of other things that we probably don't really even care about. But why that's important, next slide. Change Healthcare is tip of the spear. They are far-reaching. They are the Call of Duty of medical technology in the space right now. And we can talk about what they're doing and what they say they're doing that makes them critical, because hint, 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 table stomp, when we talk about why they're targeted, this will be important. They have workflows. Their technology streamlines billing, claims, and communication, all of which are monetized. Their outcomes, right? Their data analytics and even AI at this point is what they're advertising. Those decision support tools increase productivity, accuracy, and they also empower both the patients and the providers to be more informed, which is good from a patient perspective. And they also do this, they drive for engagement. So the patients have control of their data, their health, their appointments, the entire experience, and they can stay connected to the providers as much or as little as possible, which means the providers now do not have to support a lot of the waste, Lean Six Sigma, that would be considered when you have someone coming into a room, then filling out paperwork, then doing these things, then doing the research, and during that period of time waiting and customer sat going down. And because of all these efficiencies, Change has completely reduced the cost and increased potential revenue for a large majority of the healthcare systems in our space. Next slide. So what are we here for? So that's Change. That's your health. This is our case study. We're here to understand the cyber kill chain. Next slide. So the cyber kill chain is a valuable framework. It's actually used, and this is the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. It's actually used to understand the different stages of a cyber attack. It is a roadmap of the attacker's mindset. It's a diagram of where they start and how they get to their success criteria. However, only a truly robust defense can take this and go forward with it and apply it to your own space. That means you have to understand not only the steps of the attacker, which are the reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, and then actions on the objective, but you have to understand the timeline to the bottom. You have to understand what's happening during each one of those steps and how those phases are broken down. And on top of that, and this is why there's 2 blocks at the top, you have to speak the language to the business and the language to technology that makes sense to them so that they can defeat the attacker. So the way to stop an attacker is not to have to deal with their kill chain, because that means they've already done it. It's to get ahead of it. It's about anticipating their activities, which is why when we examine each stage of the Change Healthcare breach through the attack kill chain lens, we can gain valuable insights into how the attackers operate, the attackers of today and the attackers of tomorrow. And then we can identify where we can be proactive and intelligence-led and offer strategies that'll allow for us to disrupt the current plans, as well as better protect ourselves in the future against future plans. Now, the column on the right, most of you might not have seen that because very few people put that in their diagrams as well. These are the things that the actual protectors, that the blue teamers, that the people that are being attacked are doing. And when you add those steps on, those tactics as well onto this particular chart, what you're trying to do is identify at what point in the kill chain, whether it's reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery or exploitation, or further along, you can disrupt them through denying, detecting, degrading, deceiving, or destroying them. Next slide. Not next slide, maybe next slide. So these are the stages: reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, and then actions on the objective. So this is the diagram that we're going to go back to. Next slide. We're going to start. Change is the target because they're good at what they do. So the first thing that the attacker is going to do is called reconnaissance. We start here because this is the first time you can see activity, whether it's overt or subversive. If it's overt, and that would mean if you see activities like probing, or there's information leakage and you've identified them, identified your information and confirmed that it was your leakage. Reconnaissance is about what the attackers are doing as a part of their preparation and planning. This is where they gather all the vital information about changes, systems, and actually pinpoint the weaknesses. Note, I didn't say vulnerabilities. And this could start as far back as scanning for vulnerabilities. Anyone can do that. They can scan internally through several different methodologies, but they can scan externally, and scanning those vulnerabilities for changes, network infrastructure, and web apps. That's just one step, and it's very easy to do. They can also use phishing emails to trick employees into revealing their login credentials, or they can use phishing emails to trick employees into landing exploits. I'm not currently investigating Change. I just want to make sure I say that out loud. I'm not investigating Change. I don't have any inside or insider information, but they could use phishing emails to land payloads. And then this is also when they're researching what software version that Change is using so that they can identify whether there are any known vulnerabilities already there, right? And then reconnaissance can be a short term. So I could start doing recce, reconnaissance, and plan to start an attack a week out. Or I can do long-term reconnaissance, which means I'm either gathering information from past exploits or past identified campaigns, or I'm sitting around long enough for a cycle to identify the most impactful time for me to attack. And once the attackers have all that information, then they move to the weaponization phase. This is the phase where they identify the tools of the attack and then do an assessment of whether or not what tools are the most cost effective and most efficient. So this could be, they could either craft custom malware designed to exploit very specific software flaws that are found in the environment itself. This could be a software flaw in their authentication. It could also be a software flaw in their third-party cloud providers' systems of connection. It could also be anything like a packaging 0-day, anything that you can put into a toolkit. That's what they're looking for. They can also be more complex, where they can create cleverly disguised emails with those attachments or payloads, and then further infiltrate the system. So phishing here can be used as reconnaissance. Phishing can be used as payload delivery. So in this case, right now, we're talking weaponization, and phishing could be used to exploit post-attack reconnaissance and establish command and control. So once the groundwork is laid, so we've identified the target, we're researching and stalking the target, and now we're moving on to, this is the tool that's the best tool for us to use against our target. The attackers have laid all of the groundwork that they need, and it's at their fingertips. We are now ready to cross the line of demarcation. So next stage of the kill chain. Next slide, please. Next stage. This is the fun part for the attacker. Now, during this period of time, if anybody remembers the slides to the list of things to the right of the slide, during this period of time, we, hopefully the attacked, are seeing some kind of activity proactively if you can. That's where cyber risk monitoring comes in and threat intelligence comes in. If you can detect, whether you're monitoring the dark web or many other things, if you can detect that you're being targeted, that's where you could take your first step to counter the bad guys and gals. But if you're not detecting and you're not proactively scanning and you're not looking, then they've gone through targeting, which we're going to also call pre-compromise, and they're ready to start breaching the system. So now we are in compromise. This is important because for most people, most incident responders, a compromise is not necessarily an incident. And I'll say that one more time. A compromise is not necessarily an incident. So now that the weaponization has been crafted, the attackers are now like trying to deliver the weapon. They're gathering their malicious code inside and outside of Change Healthcare's defenses. They already know what they're required to do. They've already identified a vulnerability or an attack surface, whether it was a person or a combination of a person and bad processes. And they've decided their tactics, and they're starting to do activities. These activities can be anything. They can be automated, they can be manual, they can be human operated, or they can be completely bot-led. So they're sending carefully crafted, and I mean very carefully crafted, phishing emails. These emails are designed to not just trick an employee into clicking the bad link, but to also go past the click through the download. That means that we're no longer just talking surface accuracy. We're talking full deep fake, and it happens, it's being commoditized, which means we're seeing these types of attacks and this level of sophistication, which wouldn't be considered sophistication in the past, but is now, where it's not the first click that is the intent, it's actually the second click, and the attacks are working. So they could also be directly exploiting the already known vulnerabilities in the web apps or through social engineering. If there was, by chance, a piece of the Change Healthcare network infrastructure that may be at risk or less hardened because of activities or turnover or processes of their third-party provider, then this is something that we would begin to exploit. And fortunately for the attackers, unfortunately for us, it's very difficult to detect. And if we can't detect, we can't deny. So once that code is delivered and it finds a foothold means that we are in the system, on the network, we can see what we need to see. We can control our payload, and we know where we are, and we know who can see us. The exploitation phase begins, right? So we went breach, compromise, exploitation. What does this mean? To the attacker, it's just the next step. To us, we're now in a state where we could maybe have identified that we're under attack. We are under attack, but unless we have specific Specific, unbiased, and thoroughly tested processes to monitor and or manage our infrastructure, you would not find this type of attack in this stage, not early and not often. So this is where the advantage is. Note that I've said at this point, we've said it could be phishing. And if it was phishing for our case study, and the intent was the secondary click, then the payload has been delivered. I didn't say that the payload was delivered directly to Change Health. I said through a third party, which means that the third party has either missed or failed to act on indications. And Change, if it's a cloud provider, has a service that is guaranteed to not allow this to happen. Those of you that
Sorry,
are
Elizabeth, could you expound on, you said that a compromise doesn't necessarily equate to an incident.
Yes. So, depending on where you are, if you are a cloud service provider, Google or IBM, actually, IBM, Microsoft, those types of providers, if you have an unauthorized actor who has landed equipment, software, or code script on your infrastructure, that code from an insider threat and a current investigation rules perspective is not in itself a compromise. If there is activity and a crime committed, they're calling that a compromise. Does that make sense, Patrick? Because it's a good question, and I'm hoping you're gonna say a thing.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like you're referring to like an incident, a reportable incident. And so, but from a blue team defense, it's still an incident. Like if something happens on my network and I detect it, I'm firing off the incident response plan and doing all of those things. But it sounds like from your description, what you're talking about is a reportable incident where like you have to report that there was a breach and a compromise in this data, and you have to contact all the people whose data was touched, right? But I'm sorry, I'm coming from a blue team inside, like anything happens, on my network, my endpoints,
No,
all that
do
stuff.
not apologize. You are walking down the right path, sir. I'm an infrastructure gal. I'm a red teamer masking as a blue teamer. You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
And I'll say, let's take this as a completely hypothetical case study. And this is why we talk about this. So now we're talking about the offensive side. We're talking about the person that's being attacked, right? Patrick, can I ask, just pick an infrastructure configuration for me, right? You'll be the infrastructure provider for Change Health.
I don't know what you want me. I don't understand the question.
Pick a cloud provider.
Oh, Google,
Right.
sure.
Google. Okay. So I'm Change. My services with you are platform as a service, software as a service, even potentially application as a service, and then in some cases, enterprise as a service, correct? So if a part of that service is the security of my infrastructure, when you, Google, are responding to incidents on your infrastructure, at what point does your incident become a customer incident? When do you reach out to Change to say, hey, we see some activity on our network?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to off the top of my head. I'm sure that it's documented in there somewhere in the. No, that wouldn't be documented in the agreement.
Think about this. You're still the incident responder. Like you're like me. Like I'm doing the investigation. I go, we've got unauthorized code in data center XYZ. I go down to the server level, right? Like I'm going, this is not supposed to be here. Ding, 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 ding. but I'm the incident responder. I'm the analyst or the cyber team. Who's responsible for legal communications?
Yeah, you just said it legal. I mean, you just
Yeah,
report
I
it up,
mean, right?
and
So
it's
how long?
them. 48 hours is 48 or 72 hours for a reportable breach. Is what you have once you've identified a breach. And data's been compromised, as I understand it. It's in healthcare, HIPAA,
Mhm.
PCI type environments. It's 72 hours, I believe.
You're correct. Now, think about this. Who has to identify it as an incident?
Right. So it's still Google because it's their infrastructure.
And you and I would go, hey, that's a compromise. An example would be one of our contractors, one of our vendors has an internet exposed website with our operations data on it. We're like, oh no, that's a bad thing. It's OPSEC. I came from the military, so it's a little more, for me, that's OPSEC. That's a leak. At a minimum, that's a leak. Can we take the web page down? That requires the person that is the employer of the vendor, right? Going, hey, I found something. It's your stuff. It's my stuff on your stuff. Can you go pull your stuff down that you're supposed to have for me so that you're not exposing me, right? Now, the vendor in this case is at fault, right? If I didn't see my own stuff out there and the vendor found that, like the vendor's team found it before I found it, what exactly is the impetus or the push for the vendor to tell me that they exposed my data? It's not customer data. I'm their only customer. It doesn't meet any of the, it actually doesn't meet any of the, if you're in California, like 10,000 people affected, right? Because I'm a single vendor, a single customer.
Right. I mean, the reporting stuff would be all based on compliance and regulations, and depending upon where the people that got compromised sit, that will drive who and when they report, who they
Now,
report to and when they report.
exactly. Now think about this. In the case of you, Google Cloud Service Provider, your team sees unauthorized access to a list of names and passwords at Change Health. You see some activity, but that's all you see. You don't see any exfil. You don't see any odd logins. All you see is this one log that says somebody at a data center logged into this document, didn't copy it, didn't do anything, logged in, logged out. That was the last thing you saw. Is that an incident?
No, I mean, jeez, it's a
Right?
reportable, it's a internally to my team, it would be like a reportable event or worthy, whatever verbiage you want to use there, something worthy to note and document. But is it like the world's on fire and I need to scream and yell? I don't know. I mean, there's not enough information from the example that you gave to do that.
I
There would
just said
be.
logins and passwords, right? Logins and passwords. That's all you saw. That's it. Someone saw that stuff.
Well, if
Now,
they saw logins and passwords to me, then yes, that, and if they're not at least hash and salted, like if they were in clear text in a clear text file, that's that is definitely for me, world on fire. Like I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, at least internally, saying, hey, somebody just pay attention to this. This is a problem.
so I will tell you that the majority of the data centers worldwide, their their entry and access systems are in clear text. The lessers have you log into a system, you put your information in there, right? It's supposed to be secure. So me from company A, I go into the system, web portal, put in my information. hey, I need access. They're like, cool, your email address, your name, you know, this whole long list of log passwords, right? Everybody uses it. Only the lesser can access it. It's a security thing, but they're not hashed. That's not even important to you, right? You just lost that. They can't get anywhere in your inside of your environment with the information that they use to get into the data center. They can't. You're protected. Why would you tell Change that a large list of their logins and passwords for access has been compromised? And user information. In this particular case that I'm talking about, it there was like telephone numbers too, right? Why?
Well,
What is
one
your
password.
impetus?
First thing is password reuse. I mean, if they used it at one place, they're likely using it at the other. You know what I mean? Like that's just like good
But
security hygiene is
You're Google. I'm
fair
Change.
enough. Fair enough. I get where you're going. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. That's why I say proactive. That's why I'm here telling you about the kill chain, right? Because the question you ask is why we need to do these things. The question you ask is why we have to do cyber risk monitoring. I mean, right now we're just talking about, okay, have we forgotten? We've been investing in protecting our systems, whether you were Microsoft, I don't know about Google really, because like I don't like them. I was a Microsoftie, but you know what I'm saying, platform agnostic. Like we've been investing, commercials been investing in their own protections, in their own systems, in their own people, right? Microsoft systems, Google systems, their incident responders are worried about their systems. They're pointed internally, right? When something happens like a Nobelium and they see that other people are going to be infected, they're going, okay, we're secure. We need to help everybody else. That's what Microsoft did during COVID, right? But what if the attacker wasn't coming after Microsoft? They've been coming after Change the entire time. We don't even need to do anything that would identify our tour of your system as an actual ongoing attack. You won't find a command and control node. You'll just see odd behavior from one place or another. And I'm saying this, I want you all to recognize that I'm the one that usually says blame big business or something like that, right? But if your people are trained to look for the threats to your system and you're just one of the breadcrumbs, this is why third party is so insidious, right? You're just one of the breadcrumbs. Who's gonna tell Change that like Google got hit and Change stuff went missing or was observed, and then Netflix got Change stuff observed. Now I'm just making things up, right? And then the security guard company, the logistics company, Change got things observed. So 4 different like individual companies have to come together and go, hey, this activity seems like something might be happening. All 4 of those organizations to make it significant to go, hey, Change, something's happening, for Change to be able to go, hey, something's happening. Does that make sense? This is why it's so insidious, right? And we just got to like their network infrastructure, because the network infrastructure does not necessarily have to be the infrastructure that is owned and operated by Change. It could be the Google infrastructure, right? I think were there any other questions on that? That was a really good question. And thank you all for letting us walk down that path, because it is absolutely essential that we actually have those conversations. I don't see any questions or hands up. Can I get a thumbs up? Oh, wait.
Yeah, Liz, I had typed one out just to try to spur some conversation. We can take that one at the end.
Okay. So if you're in the audience right now, I'm going to require somebody to throw up a emoji or something, so I know you're all alive. And then we'll go to exploitation, right? So here in the example, I said, you know, this is the delivery. An employee might have been tricked into opening a phishing email, or an attacker may have been directly exploited or have directly exploited a web application vulnerability. But it could actually be that that employee was a third-party employee, not spilling any information to anyone, right? And once the code is delivered and finds its way into the foothold, now it's a foothold, but where is that foothold? That's when the attacker starts doing the damage. So The bug might allow attacker to run unauthorized commands on the company server. The successful attack, right, could result in an employee handing over like credentials or allowing for privilege escalation, right? And so from there, with that initial access, right, this is what we're talking about, into installation, the attacker then moves to installing and solidifying their attack posture. So installation here could be install backdoors to maintain access, identify ways to cover their tracks, setting up proactive honeypots. Some of you know what I mean when I say that, because it's weird. Deploy keyloggers, and then start probing attacks or some other insidious things that they do. This is the stage now that's set for the attackers to move forward with whatever they're going to do inside of Change's health infrastructure. So again, I'm saying infrastructure. I'm an infrastructure gal. My concept of infrastructure may be a lot larger than other people's, but remember, you've got infrastructure. When you say that, it means cloud, it means on-prem, it means owned by third party, owned by self. This is the way the red team, this is the way the attackers are thinking. So they could have installed remote access software to maintain control. But at this point, for those of you that know, they didn't actually even need to. Next slide. Sorry, I went through that fairly quickly. If we go back to slide 11 real quick, I just want to give everybody a quick look at 11. Right there, again, we're talking reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, and now we're going into command and control and actions on the objective. So now if somebody's having a really bad day. So we're now down to the damage is done. Slide 15, maybe. So after that, there we go. So now you have to imagine. I keep saying imagine because you really don't have to imagine. You can see this in several other attacks. The attackers actually have a foothold inside the system. Inside could be inside of Change owned, or inside a leased data center, or inside their provider's data center. They need a way to control the attack, and that's where the command and control comes into place. So now this C2, command and control is C2. This C2 node or C2 channel has to be established, so it needs a beachhead, and it has to be hidden, because if you, the good guys and gals, see the command and control node, then you're going to take us out. And so we hide it, and we hide them well, and it will look like, and always looks like, normal web traffic. And that's why I think, Patrick, you said it. You and I look and understand what our systems look like. A 10% change in traffic flow to some people means nothing, because their numbers aren't, their monitoring is not that specific. Their systems are more complex. But a good attacker will avoid detection by proving and convincing us that they don't actually exist. So that could be any number of things. But once they have control and they have the ability to operate the package, this is where actions on objectives happen. Now, mind you, we've gone through this in like one session, but we could get up to this point. This could have been last December. It could have been last September. And they waited until the right moment when they could do all of the things that they needed to do and be in the place that they needed for best effect. Higher order effect is better. Return on investment means bigger bang for your buck, unfortunately. And this is where they start exfiltrating the sensitive data and disrupting operations, and then obviously also deploying the ransomware. So in this case, early indications with Change said that the intent was ransomware from the beginning. However, the current flow of the event doesn't necessarily say that. Many situations now, you see people exfiltrating first, and then after they've gotten what they want, throwing disruption and deployment of the ransomware as a cover for their original intentions. So one specific actor wants to look as if they're a different criminal organization actor, and so instead of using their normal process, they use someone else's. That's the command and control. And command and control infrastructure gives the attacker both remote control and a remote control panel for carrying out all of the things that they want to do when and where they want to do it. Any questions? Next slide. So the Change Healthcare attack isn't an isolated event. It is actually a pretty solid, it's a very good example and a stark reminder of like the cyber threats in our healthcare systems phase. When we start talking about understanding the tactics used for the cyber kill chain, we empower ourselves to act. Patrick, that's why I loved your question. We have to educate ourselves. We need to be more proactive. We need to look at our roles and what that means to us, but then have a bigger aperture about what our ultimate mission actually is. We need to collaborate. There's some key defense strategies that most of the healthcare organizations have to use and everyone should use. If you're not using MFA, man, I'm just not going to talk about that anymore. But also regular patching, proactive planned patching. I cannot tell you how effective that can be in eliminating your soft target, and eliminating yourself as a soft target. And vulnerabilities, patching the highs, but not the mediums and the lows, mean that you have like 2,000 mediums and 2,000 lows and one high, and all of those lows equate to overwhelming your one high. So staying up to date isn't just about efficiency. It's about keeping the doors locked. It's about keeping the windows locked too and the walls up. So you have to be diligent, not just in your patching, but in understanding what your patching means and where you invest in that defense. And you need to use your business intelligence as well as your ability, your knowledge and your own ability to understand where those vulnerabilities are and to outpace where you think the vulnerabilities will be tomorrow. So you've got employee training, which I know all you guys are talking about, but also not just from internal. Get out there, like look up our manifesto, talk about integrating cybersecurity into operations, use what you can, because the bad people, the criminals and the enemy nation states are your people. That means you, that means me, that means the people that work for me, people work for you, you're the defense. So training is compliance, but it also is a threat detection activity. So do that, say that. If anybody needs something to put in writing for their to get their training approved, please come to me. The other thing we need to do is back up our data. So data is more important than it ever has been, especially with AI. If you're not integrating your cyber practices into your data plans and your InfoSec plans, as well as continuous learning, you are well behind the power curve. So on top of all those things, we've talked about strong encryption. We talk about having reliable backups. If you're counting on your encryption and your backups, then you're already done, but have them so that you can be resilient. At the end of the day, some people may say it was change's fault. And, accountability is accountability, responsibility is responsibility. But the call to arms here is that change happened, and it's happened to one of the best in the industry, one who should have been protected better and with better tools and more invested than anyone else in the industry, with two exceptions. So we have to be proactive in building a more secure environment. We, the cloud service providers, we, the third party, we, the service providers, we have to do these things. And unless you understand where the bad guys are coming from and how they're doing these things, you won't get there. Next slide. And I think that's a pause slide for questions. And then one more slide. So any questions on the Change Healthcare? Because I have one more thing, and I know we're almost out of time, but I just want to throw this out there. Any questions? Okay, so go to the next slide. So there are limitations to this particular model. Next slide. One of the things that we have to talk about is that the classic model, the cyber kill chain, is a valuable tool, but it gives a framework that talks about steps, and it was meant to be linear. In real life, it's a lot messier. Things go up, things go down. You can cycle, it can be a circle. Attackers don't always follow the neat step-by-step. Sometimes they do the loop. Sometimes what you think is the attack is actually just the probe. And we talked about how these things are much more complex, and you don't even know who is actually being attacked at the end of the day. Nonlinear tactics you got to think about. We see that more and more every day. 20 years ago, the Marine Corps was going, hey, we need to go to guerrilla warfare. That's what we did. It's the modern operations. Well, now digitally, we've got to do the same thing. And as the landscape is moving forward, new technologies means new vulnerabilities. New vulnerabilities means new hacker tips and tricks. So we have to adapt just like they adapt, but we have to do it faster. Next slide. there are weaknesses, like I just said, and there's other examples. So MITRE is another example. We see how the cyber kill chain helps us visualize attacks, but it's broad. That's where MITRE comes in. It gives us a detailed view of the attacker's supposed toolbox. When attack, which is MITRE's developed framework, came up, it originally was just an encyclopedia of a listing of the adversary tactics and techniques. But now we've been able to break it down into phases to show how the attackers gain access. But again, this is all rearward facing information. Did our attackers have AI before? Maybe, maybe not. Potentially, maybe like 10 years ago, maybe. But if the tools and the tips are different than they were in the past, MITRE's tactics and those tactics will be outdated. So that is rearward looking. Why that matters, the beauty of attack is in the details. You can study the process and you'll be able to identify the low-level script kiddies, the copycats, because they use the same patterns. You may be even able to forensically fingerprint them because it allows you to identify patterns in the tactics themselves and in the technology. It also does prioritize defenses a bit because if you know where you were hit before, you can reinforce and you can support the structure, harden those spaces. And it also allows you to share like a little bit of the threat intelligence, which is something that doesn't normally happen across the board. Attack does not in any way, shape, or form replace like the kill chain. Lockheed would never let that happen, and it's for good reason because it was very smart. You should think of the kill chain as like the strategic big picture, and then attack as like some down and dirty stuff, but again, always rear looking. Next slide. So the idea here, and this is the conclusion, is that anything that you can hear, see, smell, feel is a possible attack vector. And when we talk about attack vectors, we talk about emissions, we talk about AI, all the passion that you're putting into being like a real defender out there, you have to continue putting into learning the next type model series, learning the next tool that's going to keep you ahead of what our enemies are doing. That means firewall encryption and patching. Yeah, get it, foundational. But if you're still thinking about that and looking at your tools and going, I didn't see it happen in my log, so it didn't happen, you are incorrect. You have to start using your superpowers and meet up with my superpowers and realize that like, it's not just the tech, it's the human capability, and your superpower, if you want to call it that, comes in being the human that can identify the things that no one's looking for because you actually know and care about the stolen data, even if it doesn't look significant to you. And what that means is you'll be able to share, you'll be able to say, hey, why aren't we talking to our customer? Why aren't we talking to our up and downstream about this? Or you might even be the person that gets the phone call or the email from your friend over at the other side of the fence, goes, hey, are you guys seeing this? Because I'm seeing this. And that's the kind of teaming we want. So cyber defenders, that's us. Those are the people that will work on this, the people that eat, sleep, breathe this, and will continue to go forward using kind of a process that will align to this very specifics, like Patrick was talking about, those processes. And then you have to have your proactive thinkers who could be technical, but might not be. They could be your business leaders because they know things that are important that we don't know. And then at the end of the day, you know, worst case scenario, it never does hurt to just call somebody that's exceptionally good at Pokemon Go and looks good doing it. That would be me. So with that, are there any questions? And I'm sorry I went long.
I don't
Nope.
have any, just thanks for having that good conversation and great presentation. Thank you.
No, thanks, Patrick. It's a lot of content. We've only got 1 minute left. If you want me to take your question, Jim.
Yeah, I'll ask one real quick. You know, would you say I'll ask my second one that I typed out. Would you say teams or pen testers, attackers, someone would have profiled your machine after initial exploitation to build some idea of what normal looks like to help themselves blend in? Is that too advanced for most, or do you think it's important that infrastructure people like us on the call have the idea of what normal baseline super low level metrics like CPU normal, network spikes, DNS requests, those things that may be early indicators of odd behavior? Do you see attackers profiling that so that they have a baseline, or is it something that maybe is only for the most advanced folks?
Oh no, I'm going to tell you. So the examples that I'll talk about are in blogs already from like a couple years ago or so. Oh, and one that just happened. The results ended up happening in February. When I say proactive monitoring, like the reason that we're not able to keep up with the enemy right now, the attackers, the criminals, the nation state actors, the non-nation state actors, the commoditized bad guys, is because they know that we're so lazy that we don't know our own systems. They come in and hide in, oh yeah, that's always happened, right? One of the attacks from one of the SolarWinds attacks, so Nobelium, I think it was 2 maybe, they sat in the system. They sat in the system long enough to understand what it would look like if someone started to look for their presence, right? It is infrastructure people out there. This is our time, right? Like the Goonies, I might have aged myself there. It's our time. The reason that some of these things have been identified, and I can claim credit for some myself, is because of that kind of level of detail. It's because of people like Patrick going, but wait a minute, that's something, it's not nothing. But you also have to remember, in a lot of large organizations, it's like 7 different cyber groups. And one group goes, hey, I see this. They're like, put it in our system. They put in the system. That group goes, hey, there's something, but it's not mine, right? And it goes to another system. So in order to be ahead of the AI, in order to be, and I'm talking actual AI, I'm not talking language models, right? I'm talking in order to be ahead of the AI, or in order to be ahead of the faster stuff, you have to be able to identify from your own benchmark anomalies, because the way that the systems are flowing right now, the systems, so your network logs, the good attackers know where your blind spots are. And we have a large number of people who are, dedicated cyber professionals that will say something just like, it's not happening. And you go, how do you know it's not happening? My logs don't say it's happening. And I go, hey, Chris, can you tell this guy that the flapping is happening on his server? Yeah, can't, no, I know. I'm sorry, I'm not yelling. He's actually in the data center, that kind of thing. This is the problem that we're facing. It's not just a technology problem, and it's not just companies not investing in it. It's a complicated mess, but the biggest vulnerability that they're calling out is the people, when really we're actually not the vulnerability. We're just the attack surface, because we're the thing that was the least invested in to be hardened, right? And so, yes, you do need to know, like infrastructure people, again, it's our time. And those of you that do build infrastructure, you know why I'm saying it this way. Because if you don't know your system, then you're doing yourself and the company a disservice. And that means knowing your system.
A good example of that, maybe I'll leave you with this: the XZ backdoor from about 2 weeks ago. The guy who published that, he had some idea of what a baseline for his SSH daemon on his server looked like, and things got out of normal. So yeah, we found the planted backdoor. It's a very important level of detail to have, and I'm really glad you say that.
Yes, everyone should say that. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Liz, very much for the wonderful talk. I will be posting this on YouTube as soon as I get the download from Zoom. Thank you to everyone who was able to join, and I look forward to seeing you all at our next OWASP Nashville meeting.
Thank you. And find me on LinkedIn, or if you can.
All right. Thanks, everybody.